Hey, good evening, everybody. This is Big Bill coming to you live from Model Railroading Live. Today is March 22nd, 2023, and it's 9:07 p.m. Welcome to the third installation of Mr. Baronic, Bill Baronic's The Track Planner on building benchwork my way. This is a four-part series. This is the third of the series, and we're going to have Mr. Baronic on in a minute. What's going on? There's a lot of things going on. I got to get my foot in this thing here. That's good. I don't even think anybody's. Oh, wait. Is anybody out there? Let's see. I got to put it on. Yeah. We got Dave, BNSF, Nenscale, M&M Rails, Grandpa Rails is here. Hey, Bill, John. M&M's, Dave, I guess. Container Man 68. Hey, guys. How's everybody doing? We're running a little late because John has a previous engagement that he takes care of, personal one, and he comes in right about 9 o'clock. So sorry for the delay. Anyway, on where are we? Bill Baronic, the track planner, is on. Yosemite Valley Garden Railroad's in the house. Chris Bell's in the house. Everybody's saying hello to each other. So with that said, if Mr. Baronic's in the house, let's bring Mr. Baronic in, the track planner. There he is.
Hello, Billy. How are you?
The man, the myth, and the legend. How are you?
Who are you talking about?
You.
Yeah. Myth, maybe. I don't know about a legend.
Well, I'm a legend in my own mind, but you got to start someplace. How have you been?
I have been great. No problems at all.
Good. Very good. Now, tonight this is the third part of a four-part series. And tonight's series, or what we're going to talk about or show, is called what?
I decided to name it Benchwork My Way. And I see benchwork built all kinds of different ways. And after having built 5 layouts, I get a little better with each one. And this one I've got now probably was my best benchwork I've built yet. And what I want to do is I want to be able to show people what that we don't need 4x4s and 2x4s to build benchwork. We can get by easily with 2x2s, 1x4s, 1x3s, 1x2s, and still build very stable, very sturdy benchwork. Mm-hmm. And it'll be, again, I have a disclaimer on the first slide where my way isn't the only way. There's lots and lots of ways to do it.
Why do you think a lot of model railroaders who go and build the structure, the base for it, that they choose the 2x4s?
Well, that's a good question. You know, I see it all the time, and I think I don't know. I really don't know, because again, after 5 layouts, I learned real quick. Probably one of the funniest stories, Bill, was the gentleman that I did the layout for in Florida. He lived in a small piece of property, and the layout room was, I think, like 10 by 10, 12 by 12 or something. It was just a small room. And he had an existing layout he wasn't happy with. So he contacted me, and I told him, after I seen what he was trying to do, I says, we really just need to start from scratch here. And let's design one just like the room was empty, which I did. He was happy with it, but he wasn't happy because it meant he was going to have to tear down his old layout. Well, I didn't think much about that. Okay, well, you tear it down. What he didn't tell me was that he had built the layout. And again, remember, we're talking about 100 square foot, maybe 130 square foot layout here. He built the benchwork and put it together using lag bolts.
Oh.
Not screws, and that lag bolts. And I, I says, you know, you don't have to park a car on this thing. It will be fine. Well, the bottom of the story was real is this. After he did tear it down and started over again, or disassemble it, I guess is probably the better term here. Anyway, he sent me a little note and he says, just for your information, there were about 150 lag bolts in this layout.
Whoa. Well, it says, what's his name? What's his name? I apologize. Dave BNSFN scale says it used to be cheap and very easy to find. And Container Man 68 says dimensional lumber was just easy to find.
Yeah. Well, and it is. I'm all about lightweight. The what you're going to see tonight on the show on my layout. It was built. The modules were built in my garage, and I carried them through the house, down the stairs, into the train room myself, and I installed them myself. That's how lightweight they.
Oh, no,
And
you're right. You're right. I tell you the story over and over again about when we were building this, and Darren, my friend who kept me building it, was like, "Oh, we have to get 2x4s," and I was like, "No, 1x3s," and he was like, "No, Bill, you got to do this by 2x4s." And then when we called you up and put you on conference, and you told Darren, "We're not parking his Honda on this." It's just, yeah, but you don't know. You ever see the size of Bill? He's a big guy, He said
yeah,
no, and the 1x3s came in handy. And what happened was, we had installed track lighting in the bedroom, in the train room, and we had a bit of a problem with the thing, and we both had to get up. I covered the layout with drop cloth, and then we had to get up on it, me and him together on the top of the peninsula, and fix the electrical problem, which we did. And then after we got off it, he was like, that was pretty sturdy for, we used 1x3s. I was like, yep. Robert Holman says, I built my first layout with 2x4s, 4x4s, and lag bolts. I'll never make that mistake again.
Yeah, that's building a bridge. That's not building a layout.
Yeah. Container Man 68 said, my last layout, soon aluminum, foam, and masonite.
Yeah. I seen one not too long ago by a gentleman that did it all with metal studs. And that's kind of neat how he did it. But I got looking at that and I thought, well, number one, it can't be any cheaper, I don't think. And number two, I just don't like cutting metal because he had to cut this at angles, and it was. I mean, he did a hell of a job with it. I thought it was great, but boy, talk about
really an out of work tin knocker. So
I don't know. The layout before this one, the one when I moved out here to Colorado, I bought a ranch up in, they call it a ranch. It was just raised rocks on it, but I was up in the foothills here, and I had a 24 by 24 foot space, and I built that layout out of, well, I had a 19-foot peninsula on it. And what I did with it is I went and bought manufactured floor joists, and I bought them in 24 foot lengths, and I cut it down to 19 foot, attached it to the one wall using 2x2s to set it on. Then I did use a couple 2x4s at the other end, and for 19 feet there was nothing in between. And that floor joist didn't sag one. I bet I don't think it sagged an eighth of an inch.
Okay.
There when it was done, but it was a funny story about that was I went to the lumber yard and I ordered everything, and then I had them deliver it to me up at the ranch, and the guy drove up in a flatbed truck, and all the wood was on the back of it because I ordered everything I needed in one shot. And he backed into my driveway, and it was a double car unattached garage is where I had the layout. And I opened the door and he backed this truck up to the back to the door. And then being a flatbed, he just tipped it, and all this wood just slid real nice right into the garage. I mean, it was just perfect how it all happened. And so I'm signing the bill of lading receipt that he had delivered it. And he says, I got a question. And I says, what? He says, you're the talk of the lumber yard here. And I says, I am. He says, what are you building? And I says, it's going to be a model railroad. And he goes, okay. He says, and I says, what? He says, you're the only customer we had that ordered 24-foot floor joists and no 2x4s. He says, everything was 1x4s, 1x3s, and 1x2s and 2x2s. He says, you didn't order any 2x4s. And he says, we were trying to figure out what the hell is he doing? What is he going to do here? He says, now I can go back to the lumberyard and tell the guys, he says, it's going to be a model railroad.
What? Let me before we get to the thing, this tutorial or what PowerPoint thing. I one of the things I was told was that like when you buy the lumber from either a big box store or the lumber yard, that the room you put it in, that you should let the lumber sit for a couple of at least a week or two.
Yeah, it should. It's it's supposed to. I think the term is it gets acclimated to your environment. Now, out here in Colorado, you know, we have the opposite problem, at least where I live here, that a lot of places have, is we don't have a lot of humidity here. There's a lot of times our humidity is, I mean, sometimes if it gets above 30%, it makes the news out here. I mean, we sit around here sometimes with, now today it snowed all day here and the temperature, the humidity is 64% here, but normally it would be 25, 30%. And we don't have expansion problems with layouts here. Now, when I lived in Nebraska, that was a whole different ballgame there because, we would have one season of 0-degree weather, and then all of a sudden, 4 or 5 months later, you'd have 100-degree weather.
Yeah.
And you had to be careful of that. But yeah, they wanted to get, I think the term was acclimated to your environment, which would mean, to me, Bill, that would mean, what's the humidity in the house, what's the temperature kept at, and things like that.
Yeah. Well, before we get started, Container Man 68 says, my aluminum frame will have a span of 8 feet between legs. And Dave BNSF N-Scale says those engineered joints are very, very strong.
Oh yeah, I would think they probably would be there. My son, besides being an electrician, was his hobby was a cabinet maker. He had a full workshop where he built custom cabinetry and stuff like that. And he put me on when I built, as you'll see in these as we go through this, he put me on to the correct kind of wood glue. And as you'll see on my modules that I built, I've got modules that are 30 inches wide, 5 foot long, and there's not a screw in any of it. All I did was tacked it together with a brad nailer and used the glue that my son told me to buy. That glue, the wood splinters when you try to break it apart now.
Well, I believe
the
it.
joint, break it. And like he told me, he says it all has to do, Dad, with the type of glue that you use.
Right.
He says, you don't want to use Elmer's glue, obviously.
No, not at all. Not at all. Anyway, let's before we get started, just let you guys know out there that this show is being sponsored by Abe Froman, the Sausage King of Chicago, and by Clemenza's Bakery. Leave the gun, take the cannolis, located in Bronx, New York. Anyway, so let us go forward, Mr. Baranek.
Well, let's see if I can do this right.
Okay.
Or we'll try here. You can tell me if I'm doing it.
Eminem Rail says, kind of like when I give people rides in my car, they get acclimated to the smell. Well, I see Benchwork My Way on the screen by the track planner.
Is it going to full screen now?
No, it's just me and you are in there still, but
Okay. I pushed it
well, now
to,
we're
I pushed mine.
full screen.
Okay. All right. So shall we get started, Bill?
Um, yeah, let's do that.
Okay. And just let everybody know if you have questions, ask them. Bill will take the important ones. No, Bill will Bill will let me know that there's a question, and I don't mind getting interrupted through this thing because I get on a roll here, folks, and you need to stop me once in a while. So please, as I go through this, if you got a question, ask.
You
All
got
right,
it, brother. You got it.
all right. A disclaimer: this is going to represent my way of building lightweight modular benchwork. Please understand, it's by no means the only way that you're going to build benchwork there. It's just the way that I have done it. And if I build another layout, I would do it the same way that you're going to see here tonight. So what are we going to do? Well, the first thing I'm going to do with the show tonight is, because I'm using my layout, my track plan, I thought I would at least do an overview, not so much of the track plan, but the area that I'm modeling. So you kind of get an idea of why I designed it the way I did. Then we'll talk about the bench work, the advantages, the disadvantages. And then I've got a number of photos, and we'll kind of do a walkthrough on the construction as I built the layout. It'll kind of go from almost an empty room to where we were getting ready to actually run trains and that. So what did I model? Well, I always do weird things when I model, and this particular layout, I did the SPNS that ran in southern Washington along the Columbia River. And then I have a branch line, which is actually the second level of the layout for the Oregon trunk line. And as you see here with the arrows and everything, the SPNS primarily ran from Vancouver up to Spokane, or at least that's where mine is going to go and that. And then in Wishram, Washington, which was about halfway, not quite half, not quite halfway in between, but it was along the Columbia River. There was a yard, a freight yard that was it was almost an interchange between the Oregon Trunk Line and the SPNS. Now this has all been taken over now by Burlington Northern Santa Fe. So, but back when I modeled, and what did I model? About 1955. That's the era that I was modeling. So it wasn't Burlington BNSF at that time. This was SPNS and the OTL there. The OTL, the Oregon Trunk Line, ran south from Rishram down to Bend, Oregon. So what the box that you see is basically what I modeled on this layout. And uh, staging is Vancouver, Spokane, and Bend. Those are represented on the layout as staging yards there. So this is the area that I'm working with. The room is small. The room is only 16 by 13. I designed it as around the room with a center peninsula. I put staging along the east wall. I've got a helix that's kind of unusual. It's in the middle of the turnback of the peninsula there. I've got multiple swing gates when you enter the room. The things I want to kind of point out, because I'm going to show you some photographs now of the area. The Columbia River and its bridge is an important part of this. Believe me, talk about selective compression. You're going to see some selective compression on this layout here. And then I did a pretty decent job of modeling the Wishram yard, simply because that was going to be where all the traffic got exchanged and got trains left and went into and back and forth. Just to kind of set the tone of this layout, if it's a 6-track staging yard, and if you follow the tracks out of staging, what you'll notice is they come up along the top wall, along the bottom wall, and they tend to crisscross over each other. So it's an east-west railroad is what it is there. And of those 6 staging tracks that you see, 3 of them represented Vancouver, Washington, and 3 of them represented Spokane, Washington there. So, well, let's take a look at the where this is in an actual photograph.
Hey, Bill.
Yes.
M&M Rails wants to know, how do you reach the staging tracks?
The staging tracks, we go back here. The staging tracks were reached where you see the Columbia River Bridge there. There I had a backdrop that lifted out there. And so I could reach it by just taking the backdrop off, and I could reach in there. This is probably a good point to talk about this. When you're building staging yards like I've got it that are basically hidden, you can still, you can get to them, but they're basically hidden. One of the things you want to be absolutely totally positive about is you build those staging tracks and that staging yard totally bulletproof there, so there's no problems. And I built this thing with actually there's 6 curved turnouts, and there are some people that just would shudder thinking about having curved turnouts that were hidden and that. But this staging yard worked very, very well, simply because I took my time when I built it, and I laid the track as well as I knew how to lay it, because I knew I didn't want to be back in there working on it. You'll see pictures of this staging yard as we go along here, so you'll get a little better idea of what it looks like. So here's Wishram Yard in the 90s, I think it was. Again, it was kind of an interchange yard there. The bridge you see behind it, that's a bridge that comes across the Columbia River. The Columbia River is very, very wide. And what happened is that train you see that's heading to our right there, what you don't see in the picture, there's a Y actually out in the Columbia River. And trains, when they get to about where that one is, they have to make a decision. Do they take the left leg of the Y, and that heads them westbound towards Vancouver, or they take the right leg of the Y, and it brings them here into Wishram Yard. The Oregon trunk line is across the river over on the other side of the river there. So the Oregon trunk line would bring cars into Wishram Yard, and they would interchange with cars there. And where was the Oregon trunk line going? It was going south to Bend, Oregon. And then from Bend, Oregon, it went on south, and it actually went, one of the places that you ended up with was at the KDY down there, where then you made the decision, do I head west towards LA, or do we start going eastbound there? But this is a picture of the Wishram Yard, and you can see the Columbia River and that bridge that I added to the layout. Let's go back. I'm going to step back just real quick here.
Just so
you see in the picture here,
yeah,
the
Bill.
bridge.
M&M Rail says, I like the idea of staging behind backdrops. No need for a hole in the wall that goes to another room. And Container Man 8 says, oh, that's where the 7 girder bridge is with the lift bridge. Then he
yes, he's exactly right. And
yeah,
as you see,
there a lift bridge? He wants to know, is there a lift bridge there?
No, there was a lift bridge on that. That bridge is made up of multiple sections. If you take the girder bridges, and then you take the truss bridges that are on there, there's probably a dozen sections to that bridge, because the Columbia River is extremely wide right in that area. And they do have the middle truss bridge actually lifts up and down so that ships, barges and stuff can get up and down the river. Because if we go back to this picture again, see, it's not very far above the river, that bridge. And you can see the piers out there in the water, and each one of those piers is a section of the bridge there. And if the picture would scan a little further to the left, you see those truss bridges. There's probably a half a dozen or 7 of them on there before you get to the other side of the river there.
Robert Holman. Yeah, just so Robert Holman says, open Google Maps and search for Wishram, Washington.
Yes.
And that will show you.
that'll show you. And then this next picture is kind of an overview of Wishram Yard. And then up in the upper left-hand corner, you can actually see that Y in that bridge there. And again, you took the right leg, you come into the yard here. If you take the left leg, you're heading west towards Vancouver there. And that, and I just thought it was kind of a neat thing to model. Again, I'm going to go back for just a minute.
And
you can kind of see why I kind of modeled the yard like I did, because I wanted it to kind of depict that Wishram area there.
Yeah.
And that's where most of the activity on this layout was going to be. Of that. Okay.
ATSF Aventa Spur N-scale says, or ask, wasn't the Oregon trunk line to Bend and points south originally operated by the Great Northern Railroad?
You know, I think he's right, but I don't know for sure. There. I honestly don't know. What I do when I build myself a new layout, I try to find something that is kind of unique to build, but still buildable within the space that you have. The layout I had up in my ranch was actually a section of the Camas Prairie, which was owned by Burlington Northern and the UP in Idaho. And that was a great one to model when I had 24 by 24 foot space.
Right.
Now I'm sitting 13 by 16. I had to change my tune. Well, I kind of found this. Then I realized if I modeled in the 1950s, the middle 50s, the huge advantage with that was I was going to be able to run 4-axle motive power and 40-foot cars because it was 1955. And that was one of the reasons I made the change.
Yeah, Robert Holman has a statement here. He says, there are, oh, wait a minute, babe. The camera's not on. Can you tell me what this word is? Robert is using big words again.
Hydroelectric.
Hydroelectric dams.
Yes.
Why couldn't you just say dams on both sides of the bridges to keep?
There is a hydroelectric dam on Columbia.
It's to keep the water level consistent. Thank God my wife was here. We'd be stuck all night.
There you go. Okay, let me go to the next photo here. Now, this is the upper level. And I want to make a point here about kind of toot my own horn here, maybe just a little bit. I'm going to go back to the main level here, and I want you to pay attention to this. You come across the bridge, and this is going to you leave Wishram Yard, and you come across the bridge, which is my rendition of the Columbia River, selectively compressed a lot. You go into a tunnel here, and then the track disappears and comes around and starts up the Helix here.
Mm-hmm.
So basically, the track going across the river was the Oregon trunk line there. Now, that track, it disappeared into here, and then it started to come around and started to go up the Helix. All right, I'm going back to this picture. Here's where it came out of the Helix, right here. Remember, it went in about right here, and it came out here. I designed it that way specifically for this reason. If you were operating a train southbound on the Oregon trunk line, when that train went into that tunnel on the main level, you did not have to move anywhere. You stood exactly where you were standing. And after the train went up the Helix, it came out up on the second level exactly where you were standing there. So the operator didn't have to go chase a train to the other side of the peninsula and catch up with it there and all that kind of stuff. He just simply stood. And I'll show you a little trick here later when we get into the photographs about how I kept him or her from worrying about their train running up a 5-turn Helix too.
Yeah.
But let me talk about this upper. Go ahead.
No. Container Man 68 says, I know that area. There is a lift bridge closer to the Oregon side. And Dave, Dave of BNSF N-scale says a lot of waterfalls along the Oregon side.
Yes. The Oregon side is pretty neat. I mean, it really is. So what we did here is now we're up on the second level of this layout. And the first things that should be evident to everybody is the bench work is considerably narrower. And I'll show that in some photographs here in a little bit and that, but that you always do with a second level is you set it back. I usually try to work in the 6 to 8 inch, sometimes 10-inch setbacks in that. But here
Uh-huh.
on this second level here, I've only got 2 towns there. And there's a lot of running distance between the towns. And that now some people would think that was a waste of space. But if you're modeling a kind of a freelance prototype, you want to kind of stay true to it. Well, on the Oregon trunk line that runs down to Bend down there, there's a few towns, but they're spaced out quite a ways apart. Before I talk about that a little more, if you just follow the track plan around and we get up to right here in this area, and you see that changes to kind of an orange, this is a 2-track reversing loop that represents Bend's staging up on top of the helix. This is sitting on top of the helix there. So this is I don't model Bend. I simply represent it as a 2-track reversing loop that trains random. We're going to Bend's, and then technically they were going on further south down toward the KDY and that. Let's go back for a second to over here where it came out, and then it comes around this town here, and I just had a couple industries here. Went underneath a highway bridge here. It was traveling up grade here till it got to here. Then it went across this river here. And then you comes around and you see I've got it going through a tunnel here. Well, why did I do that? Well, on the Oregon trunk line, there's a very diverse geography there. And when I say diverse geography, I'm going to click to the next screen here. And there's an example
Oh, wow.
of the Oregon trunk line there. Now, this picture was taken only a couple of years ago. So, of course, this has got all the modern stuff on it. But this is the Oregon trunk line running south from Wishram towards Bend, Oregon. So that's why I'm going back here a second. That's why I wanted to put this scene in, because I kind of wanted to depict that picture that you just seen there of that part of the country. Very, very desolate, not a lot of stuff around. Well, here's what happens. And when you go further south than this, here's what you run into. Same main line, everything totally changed, completely changed now.
Right, right,
And,
exactly.
yeah. So that's why I picked this one to model, because I thought it had some interesting geographical things going on with it and that. And again, it was a fun layout to design and build. Okay, let's talk about the bench work, because that's really what everybody's here for. I'll unabashedly tell everybody that I'm a firm believer in L-girder bench work. I I think it's the best way to do it. It's the most versatile way to do it, and that's why I'm going to take you through here in a few slides and show you the different. There's multiple types of L-girder, but I'm going to show you basically what I think are the two prominent ones that are done. First of all, this is my rant for the evening. I think the most common mistake when building bench work for a model railroad, I think the number one is everybody overbuilds it. They completely overbuild it. I can't tell you on YouTube how many layouts I've seen that have 4x4 legs and 2x4 framing. That's crazy, folks. That's just crazy to do that.
It's just crazy talk. That's crazy talk.
Bill. We don't need it.
We don't
need it. There, when you can do it, when 2x2s and 1x4s will work just fine for you. And then the number two thing, which kind of bugs me a little bit, is bolting it or using, 1,000 screws to put it together. Again, you don't need to do that. That's not necessary there.
Right.
And again, my layout, as I'll show you as we go around here, it was built basically using brads and a brad nailer and just a good quality wood glue to build it. Okay, this is the sample one, and this is basically how I built mine in an L-girder system. there's only 1x4s, 1x3s, and 1x2s here. There's not a 2x4 to be seen on this thing anywhere there. And the L-girder part of, when they say L-girder, the L-girder part of this bench work is the bottom half, where you see in the picture, I've got L-girder in red. Well, that's a little L-shaped piece that's there. That's what I guess gives it the reason it's called L-girder. But this is the way I built mine. And when I built these modules in my garage, I didn't build it with the top half of this. I simply built the bottom half, brought them into the room, and I'll show you some pictures about how I did that, and attach these to the walls. Then everything, and what I did on mine, as you'll see in the pictures, this L-girder section, the bottom half of this bench work here is all the same level all the way around the room. It doesn't change at all. You stick a laser, you put down a laser level in the room, and you just lay it level all the way around the room. There, same level. I think I chose 36 inches. I think that's what mine is. 30. Now 36 inches is too low, but it isn't too low when you add this top half to it, where you add those risers and you put them 1x2s there. I built all of this basically, again, using a few screws, but mostly a brad nailer and wood glue is how it all went together. And again, the key to this, go ahead, Bill.
Container Man 68. I have a list here of things. Oregon is UP, Washington BNSF, but at this location, the BNFS comes across the bridges to service a lumber mill, I think. Didn't know it went clear down to Bend. Dwight at Northern Star says, if you glue all the wood together, how is it ever taken apart? Screws simply unscrew all apart from the woods. ATSF, we'll take these one at a time, but just to get them out there. About 15-25 miles east of Wishram stood the Alcoa aluminum. Amazing, I said aluminum. I could read that. Plant next to the Columbia River in Washington. I wonder if you modeled this on your industry, this industry on your layout, next to the Columbia River in Washington.
I did not model it, and there's a really simple reason for that. When you have a room that's 16 by 13, the last thing you want to put in that room is a big industry.
Right.
You want all your industries to be small. And when I say small, I'm talking about industries that maybe only take maybe a maximum of 3 or 4 cars.
Right.
There, because you want to try to keep everything in proportion. So yeah, I deliberately shy away from big industries when we're dealing with small spaces to work with. And go ahead.
What about Dwight's question? If you glue all the wood together, how is it ever taken apart?
Well, Dwight is exactly right. However, my attitude about this is if I've designed it correctly and it's supposed to do what it's supposed to do, I don't have to worry about taking it apart. And if I ever am taking it apart, it's because it's going to be I'm going to destroy it there, so I don't really care.
No, okay. Eminem Wells, he wants to know: does this sample photo that you're showing have legs, or is it just screwed to the wall?
He's going to see that in a minute here.
Hold your horses there, M&Ms. All right, you're getting ahead of the rest of us.
Yeah, he's just a few slides ahead of me. Which then that's I'm really glad he asked that, because that's the beauty of this system, as you'll see in the photographs here. It's it's the way I build mine. It's the way I go about it. Okay, let's go to another, because I want to show you.
I just have one more thing here. Human City Junction, Heat says, so let me see if I get this straight. If I use 4x4s by 1/4 inch HSS steel legs, that's an overkill?
Well, I think it is. Well, now let's step back for a second here. Is he building a layout that there's areas where it's going to be 5 foot wide, 6 foot wide? Okay, maybe not. But see, all of my designs, as you guys have seen through the one shows I've done, I'm a really, really, really big fan of narrow bench work. And when you're doing narrow bench work, you don't, as he'll see here in a few photos down the road here, there's no legs under my layout. I don't have legs under this layout.
Right.
Okay. Now I do have legs under the peninsula,
Okay.
obviously, but
Well,
there's no legs under this layout around the outside walls.
just to clarify, Container Man 68 has answered, and the answer's in capital letters, which means he's screaming, he's yelling, and he says, "Human, yes, that's overkill." Just
I'll leave it at that.
yeah, I was going to say the same thing. Let's not.
Yeah. Okay. Now the sample two I'm going to show you here, when I click the screen, is almost going to look identical, but I have highlighted the differences here.
Okay.
Well, this looks exactly the same as what you just seen, except we added some 1x2s turned on edge, and then the risers that rise up to the sub road bed and the homosote get attached to that. This is just another way of building L-girder benchwork. Do I like it? It's fine.
No, it's eight. Your layout is HO scale, correct?
Yes, it is.
Yes.
Yes, it is. Yeah. Now let me go back and forth for just a second here.
Sure, go ahead, Bill.
Oops. Okay. There you see where the risers that hold the plywood and the homosote, they actually get attached to the laterals that are built into the inside the box frame there, and that. So that and there's there where we've just changed it to where we've done it just a little differently. And one isn't better than the other. One isn't, you know. I do number one, but that's just because of the way I've done it. Let me go to here because I've got both of these showing here. What's the advantages? Well, number one, and again, remember, right now we're just talking about the bottom half. We're not talking about that upper half there. Number one is crazy lightweight. It's just, I mean, these are 5-6 foot sections that are up to 30 inches wide. And I carried them downstairs myself and stole them myself.
Right.
The assembly goes real quick. I did all the bench work on this layout from start to finish in about 3.5 days. There, that's how quick it went together. There. The sizing of it is extremely flexible, even not only by width, but how long you want each module to be. As I said before, 1-person installation. I did mine using brads and wood glue. What's the disadvantage? Believe me, folks, there is a hell of a lot of measuring and there's a whole bunch of cutting you got to do. And that's probably the biggest disadvantage to the whole thing. But once you got all the wood cut and you start assembling, boy, does it go together quickly.
Right. Robert Holman wants to know why build L-girder versus box framing?
The L-girder gives it extra strength. That when you take those two where it says L-girder and you put the one on top of the other and you glue them together, you will be amazed how strong. And if you're using good quality wood and that it's straight, boy, you don't get it's perfectly square. I mean, it's great. All right.
Hot Rod Rodney 25 says, in his opinion, 2x4s are not overkill because I have no other choice but to have to walk on mine to get trains on the upper shelves. Yeah, that's true. Again, this is just a depiction of how Bill Baronic built his layout and what is feasible and works for him. You got to go what works for you. You know.
That's right. What was the first slide I had there? This is just the way I do it.
Right. It's not.
And again, there's nothing right or there's nothing wrong with the way people do things.
Right.
But yeah, if you've got to build a model railroad and you've got to walk on it, sure. But I still contend you don't need 4x4s, and actually you probably don't even need 2x4s. 2x2s are more than strong enough to hold somebody up.
Right.
It,
And
it's
RMA 1958 says, how do you figure out L-girders modularly?
based on like in the room I had there was 16 foot long. Well, one wall was 16, the other wall had a door. So on the 16-foot side, probably what I did is I made two modules that were approximately, say, 6 foot each, and then I connected the other modules that went along the other walls to that. You actually, what you do is not too much different than designing a model railroad. You sit down and create a floor plan, and you
Right.
lay the benchwork out in a floor plan, and
Okay.
it will tell you what the measurements are. There,
Right.
you don't have to guess at it. And that I could do a whole video on how I did that if we wanted to. Okay, let's do some pictures now, because I think this is going to get a hell of a lot clearer for most people when you start physically seeing pictures of what's done. Okay, this is me just starting the layout, just getting it started. The first thing I did, and this room has a window and a door, no closets or anything like that. First thing I did was install 2x2 vertical supports, and they went up high enough so that it would also support the upper level of the layout there. So every 32 inches or whatever, however it worked out, where my wall studs were, these 2x2 verticals are screwed into the wall studs, through the drywall into the wall studs. Now, why did I not attach this directly to the walls? Well, real simple. When this layout gets taken out of this room here, all I have to do is take the benchwork, the L-girder benchwork out of the room there, unscrew those 2x2 verticals from the wall, plug the holes that the screws made, repaint the walls, and nobody would ever know there was a layout in this room there. It's really quick and easy to do. But the verticals are 2x2s. Then what you see here you're looking at the L-girder benchwork is what you're looking at here. And that I think is at 36 inches all the way around the room there. And because that's the sub benchwork, is if we want to call it that. And they maintain it all the way around. Where are the screws at? That's the screws screw into the vertical 2x2s. That's what the back of that bench work is 1x4s. And I did run screws into the walls on that there. We'll talk about those angles in the next picture. The blue tape on the floor, that simply outlined the edges of my bench work. That's so I knew what my aisle spaces were going to be and all that kind of stuff there. It was just blue painter's tape. Okay, I think this next one will clear up this leg situation for us. This is how all of the bench work around the outside of on the main level around the outside of the outside walls, around the walls, excuse me, not outside walls, around the walls. This is why I have no legs under this layout there. And a couple things of note here. Those angle 2x2s, you cannot believe how strong that is when you screw those into the verticals and then screw them into the front plates, those 1x4 plates on the layout, on the benchwork, the L-girder benchwork. That is, you can sit up there without any problem at all. That's how strong that is. Now, one thing I did, because I didn't want to ruin the baseboard in this room, is I notched out the bottom of those 2x2s around the baseboard. The 2x4 still sits on the carpet or on the floor. But again, when I decide to take this take this layout out of there, I haven't messed up the baseboards. There's nothing to worry about on that. So I hope that picture kind of clears this thing up about legs and having legs under it. There. Okay. In the corners, this is where I take in the corners and I leave an opening because if I needed to get back there for access, and I just make sure the track runs in front of that 1x4 that's a cross member, and that one piece of 1x4 running it at an angle across there, that ties both of those sections together and makes it super strong too. There, it's amazing when you start putting this all together how strong it really ends up being. There, this is the second level that you're seeing. You're seeing a, where I've gone along here a ways. The modules on the bottom is what you've seen in the first picture. Now what you're seeing is you're seeing those risers come up and holding actually what is the sub road bed for the track work. Why do I use those risers? Look at the risers on the right there and look at the risers on the left where the staging yard is. They're about 2 inches difference in height. There may be a little more than that. So the staging yard is lower. This level that you see under the window is higher, and it could actually go over the top of staging if I wanted it to. And that's all affected by how tall those risers become. And that's the trick of this L-girder benchwork is you can adjust the final height of your track work by how tall your risers are. I think that's the magic part of the whole thing there. Questions, Bill?
I have a few. It says that Human City Junction says, I missed the beginning. I'm assuming you talked about not building the benchwork before you designed your layout. Makes it easy to get turnout motors installed. If there is not benchwork on the way.
Well, let me answer that, Bill, because that comes up all the time when I'm designing. I didn't care about that when I was designing it. Because if I was putting it on top of that L-girder, if I say I had a tortoise switch machine that was in the way, it wasn't a problem. I simply cut out that section and I put a new one in that was moved over a little bit if I had to. And people worry about that all the time. It's something I don't worry about because I know it's really easy to make a correction on that.
Right.
And if you see it the way I've done it here with the raised part of the bench work where the track is going to be set on, that becomes even less of a problem to worry about then.
What else does Dwight wants to know? Anything on an upper level? Is a ladder needed or is it used?
Oh, to get up there?
Yeah. Are you talking
Oh no,
about
the upper level is only about 63 inches off the floor.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Okay. I'm 5'10", 5'10", 5'11". I try to build everything, or at least for my layouts, where that upper bench work is right slightly below my eye level there. And now, the interesting thing when he said that, one of the people that would operate on this layout is vertically challenged. We have a step stool for him.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
Paul Muscat wants to know as high as half-inch plywood for sub row bed. The only I can't see it because something's blocking. Most will ever need. One will ever need, I suppose, is half-inch plywood for sub row bed. One,
Yeah.
the most one will ever need. So
yes.
basically, without using the home sewed on top of the half-inch.
Yeah. I think you can get by with half-inch very easily. Again, we're back to a situation of how are you building the underneath part of it?
Well, the other question that came up is that's related to that question is, are your from Container Man 8 says, are your risers only located on one side, outside edges of the benchwork?
No, if we went back to that picture, well, you can see it in this picture here if we can get the arrow. There's a riser here. Sure, there's another one up here in front, but there's a riser in the back here.
Okay.
This bench work is only about 18 inches wide
Right.
there. And there's a bench, it was one back in that corner and one in that corner. When I put this sub bench work onto the layout, where the track is going to go, I adjusted the sizes of that based on where those cross members are. Again, I don't get too concerned about exactly what the measurements were. Yes, the L-girder, I did that by laying it out correctly and everything. But everything where the track was going to be attached, literally, guys, I winged it. There, as far as I knew how high I wanted it to be for elevation purposes and that, but how it all went together, I literally winged it is what I did. And that you don't have to think of everything at one time.
That's true. M&M Rail wants to know, how are the verticals attached along the window wall?
Well, they are not. They're attached up to the window, and then they stop. What's there? And it's hard to see this in the picture. There's about a 3-inch ledge. Well, matter of fact, you see where the glue bottle is, and
Right.
there's a nail. That's about a 3-inch ledge. So what I did is I ran the 2x2 verticals up, and I just left that space there. Now, I had one vertical. You'll see it in another picture, and I'll point it out when we get to that picture. I had one vertical that was a little crooked, so I stuck a spacer in between the vertical and the wall, and I glued it, or I think I glued it to the vertical, but I didn't even do anything against the wall. All I had it was pushed against the wall so that you couldn't push the backdrop back. It would stay where it was supposed to stay.
Right.
And again, remember, guys, these verticals are not that tall. They're probably only 72 inches tall.
That's
all said and done. Yeah, they're only 6 foot tall. Right. They're not that big. Okay, now here's a picture that's a better picture for you to see the separation and how it all went together with those risers and that. And the spacing between the homosote and the bottom of the upper level is 15 inches. The railhead to railhead distance is usually, I try to do a minimum of 18 inches on that there. But what you'll notice here is on the upper level, because it's narrow bench work and much narrower up there. Some places it's only 6 or 8 inches wide. I didn't build L-girder for up there. It wasn't necessary. That would have been total overkill up there, because it's only 6 or 8 inches not even if it was a foot wide, you don't need to do L-girder there. Right. L-girder is, in my mind, for the main level there.
John Trains at BFGR wants to know, do you have problems with 2x2s twisting after a time?
No, not out here.
Because of the humidity in Colorado.
You know, and I don't know why. I always want to, relate it to the humidity area thing we have, because up in northern Colorado, a lot of people don't realize, if you say northern Colorado, to most people across the country, the first thing they think of is snow. Right. Snow. Where I live, which is halfway between, I'm 45 miles south of Cheyenne, I'm 45 miles north of Denver. So I'm halfway between Denver and Cheyenne. In this little pocket in Colorado, it's a desert climate.
Okay.
We actually live in almost a desert climate here. And that. Now, where I live, if I go 10 miles, I go 15 miles west of me, I'm up at about 8,000 or 9,000 foot. Different type of weather there. But where I live, it's almost a desert type climate.
Mm-hmm. That's pretty cool. Yeah. See, here in Staten Island, we're at sea level.
Let me go back here for just a second, Bill. I want to make a point about this L-girder too. You see a track behind that main level that looks like it's going downhill. It is going downhill. That's going down to the lower staging.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. That track varied in height, and I left the space between the main level and where that track was, and then I just put that track on risers and adjusted the risers based on what it needed to be. You'll see a better picture of that in the next picture here. Okay. Now there's the upper level, and there's just a box frame. That's all it is, because L-girder is overkill for up there.
Right.
Then you see what you're seeing here. The primary thing I'm trying to show is the setback of 6 to 8 inches, sometimes 10 inches on a setback
Right.
here. Also, the question that got asked earlier about those 2x2s being off of the wall. If you look at that one down the wall, the second one from the window, you'll see that little block that goes into the wall. That's because that 2x2 was badly warped, and I didn't want to go replace it. So to straighten it out, I just put that little section of block in there and brought it right back to square,
Right.
so I could put the backdrop on there.
Right. Right.
And so pretty simple. Also, maybe something else that people will see here. If you look right down here, what you
Right.
see is a 1x2 here, and then those two risers that are sitting there. Well, there's another 1x2 on the other side of those risers. And that's how I connect the 1/2 inch plywood and the Homosote to the top of those, is if there's a joint. I do it at the risers, but I put a 1x2 on either side. That makes a really strong base to put the flat parts of it onto it.
John Train BFGR says, I live in Ontario, Canada. My 2x2s tend to twist. I like the design. I think I would use plywood for this vertical pieces.
Well, there's a layout out here that I operate on. He's built it similar to this, but you want to talk about doing it the right way. I did it the cheap way. Okay.
Nothing wrong with that.
He took 3/4 inch plywood. I think it was 7 or 8 ply, and he cut them into 1x3s, 1x2s, 1x4s, and the whole layout is built out of plywood, but cut to dimensional numbers.
No, I'm sorry.
Is that strong? Is that the way to do it? You bet. Is it the cheap way to do it? No, not even close. Okay, now here you're looking at 4 2x4s. And this is what supports my peninsula on the layout there. I turn the 2x4s the direction you see. And why didn't I have them turn the other way? Because I would have lost a couple inches of benchwork space. So by turning them like I did at 90 degrees, I picked up a couple inches of benchwork space there to work with. And that there are a total of 5 2x4s on this layout. You're looking at 4 of the 5 right there. And those are 2x4s on the floor that are just laid flat on the floor. Then I've got those triangle gussets that lock it all together.
I used that on my layout when I built it. I copied it actually from you. So.
It's strong. It's really, really strong there. And then as soon as you tie the rest of this benchwork, this peninsula, you'll see this in another picture. As soon as you tie this back into that L-girder benchwork along that wall back there that the clock's on, the peninsula doesn't go anywhere. It doesn't move. It doesn't do nothing but just there. Could you sit on it? Yeah, you could easily sit on it without any problem. There. Okay. Here's the same peninsula. Now you're just seeing it where I've got the Helix. I'm starting the Helix here. And I've kept the L-girder benchwork as it went around the Helix. I used 2x2s for the supports, the upper supports, because the 2x2s not only supported the Helix, they're going to support the upper level staging, which was Bend, Oregon, which was going to be above where this Helix finally stopped there. And there you see the 5th 2x4 is sitting there. And all I did is I didn't probably need to add that, but I added it just to make sure that I was going to give that upper level a little more strength up there, because I didn't want to have to worry about it. Was a reversing loop, and I didn't want to have to worry about messing with the track up there or anything. But that's as I was. This is a picture as I was building it. There it is with the finished Helix. There, doing the final loop, and you can see by this picture where that Helix finally went back on the other side of the benchwork and came out up there. That's what I pointed out early on in the show of where the operator didn't have to move when it went into the tunnel. This piece of track right here that you see, that was part of the hidden track that came around and started the first turn of the Helix. I'll show you another picture of that in the next picture here. But this is the Helix. Now, this sounds crazy to even mention it, but you can't believe how many people tell me they forgot. You build a Helix, every loop you put the track down and you wire it, and you do it as you go up the ladder there, and because it's really really hard to lay track in when you've only got a 4-inch spread between the levels. Kind of hard to do. Oh, also I want to make another point here. You see it says on there that Helix is only 24-inch radius. There's a heck of a lot of people that are probably watching this to say, that's crazy, that's way too small, that doesn't work. Yeah, this one works. I have a Challenger locomotive that runs up and down this thing without any problem at all, and it's never derailed. Now, I don't run it at 50 miles an hour up and down it, but it never has derailed, or I lost a pilot truck or anything. And again, this is a 24-inch radius Helix here. Why 24? Because I only got 13 foot of width in this room. I couldn't go any bigger there. Okay, now this is the picture that I think will start to make sense about what I talked about, where the operator doesn't have to hide. This is the start of the Helix right here. This was all hidden track underneath here. So the Helix came around and started up and kept going up and up. Here's where it came out. When it got up to the top level, it came over here and came out. This point and this point right here are directly under each other. Those are directly almost underneath each other. And this shows it as I started to put a little scenery and a fascia in front of it. But this is the case where the operator just stands in one location and the train will come back to him or her. This is after I put on the fascia hiding the Helix. And what I did here, which is not the cheap way to do it, believe me, but it's really the easy way to do it. I used sheet styrene that I bought in 4x8 sheets. And I used sheet styrene to go around it. As you see, the main line goes around the outside of the Helix there to get to the other side of the peninsula. The little slot, the viewing slot, that's for the people that worry about their trains in the Helix. I put that in so they could stand there and watch the train go up the Helix. Do you really need it? No, you really didn't. But people get nervous when they can't see their trains. So that was my viewing slot.
Paul Muscat has a question. He says, since I will be having a double stacked Helix for my 3-level layout, should I build it all at once or in 2 stages for each level? What would be recommended?
Well, you really have to build it in 2 stages. You really can't build it all if it's stacked, because when somebody says stacked to me, when I do the stack, and I do a lot of stacked Helix designs. Usually the lower Helix in a lot of my designs are going to the lower level, which is usually staging area. Then the Helix that's on top of that is going from the main level up to the upper level there. And I personally myself, I say it's probably better to build the upper one after you get your main level set up correctly, so you know what your elevation is on the track that's going to connect to that upper Helix there, and then start to go up from there. I got a gentleman that's about ready to have his layout operate that I designed a stacked Helix for his, and it was in a corner that was kind of hard to get to. So he built it all in one shot. He did it all, and it was fine. It's not a problem to do that.
Yeah, Hot Rod Rodney 25 says I'm only old school DC, so my layout works fine for me. 4x8 plywood sheets, plenty of layout and space. There will be plenty of switching, etc. No DCC needed. Well, that's a good choice. It works for you.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
There's nothing wrong with that at all. And again, uh, do I design 4x8 layouts? No, because that's not my forte. That's not what my design business is there to do. My design business is to design layouts that function and operate prototypically like a real railroad. And if he wants to understand what I just said there, it's really simple. Just go to my website and look on the front page, and I have the 7 elements that I use when I design a layout that affect how I design. And unfortunately, or fortunately, I don't, depending on how I guess you want to look at it, most of those 7 elements don't really have anything to do with a 4x8 layout. And
no,
there's nothing wrong. I bet you everybody listening to this show tonight or watching this show started with a 4x8 layout. So
absolutely.
there's no way that you ever want to denigrate anybody that's got a 4x8 layout. Believe me. All right. But that's the great thing about this hobby, Bill. I think there's such a diverse ways you can enjoy the hobby. There,
Yes.
you remember, Bill, when you had yours in the basement in the garage
Yeah.
down there, and
Yep.
that, yeah, and you were a happy cat. You were fine with that.
I was very good with it.
Yeah. Then you called me up, and that screwed up everything, didn't it?
Exactly. Then my whole world got turned upside down. What are you gonna do?
What are you gonna do?
Uh,
Okay, I want to show this because I think I stole this from one of the guys that lives out here in my area. This is the Helix, and if you notice a couple of things, there's no homoso. There's just sitting on 1/2 inch sheet plywood that I bought, and nothing is glued down there. I bought a washer and a flathead screw, and when you buy the right sizes, those washers, believe it or not, drop in between the molded tie plates on this Code 83 track there. And this is how all my whole Helix is done, with just these screws and the flathead screws and the washers there. And I tighten it down just enough so the track can still move a little bit, but it can't move very much. It allows it to float. And I think this is really important in places where you've got these big humidity change percentages that change. It allows the track to float a little. And the great thing is it goes together really, really quick
yeah.
there, because you're not gluing and waiting for that to dry.
Does it also? Does it also? It's also good if the track does expand, and
Absolutely.
because I know that what's his name down in Australia uses that between his rails, the
Yeah.
screw and the washer, the flathead screw, because they have a lot of high humidity during the summertime.
I'm a firm believer that, and maybe it's because I want to believe this, but the reason that Challenger locomotive runs up and down this helix without any problem at all is because this track is allowed to float a little bit, and you don't run into a kink problem or anything.
Right. Exactly.
I think that's maybe part of the secret of why it works as good as it does. Okay, now here's the staging yard that you've seen in the first picture there with a hidden track. And those are my 6 curved turnouts on this end. On the other end, there's an identical 3 turnouts to create 6, excuse me, 3 here or 3 on the other end to create 6 turnouts. Why use curved turnouts? Because they save a ton of space. Yes, they're long. Yes, they're pretty big. But if you use them the right way, I increased the length of this staging yard by, I think, 3 car lengths by going to this curved turnouts on the ends, as opposed to just putting straight turnouts in there. It was a
Excuse me. How?
So
What size? What? Do you know what the make of that turnout is and the size on it?
turnouts are Walthers. This was before they had their problems. These I bought these quite a while ago. Uh, I I honestly don't know which ones they are. I think there's. I want to say they're 7.5s is what I want to say, but don't quote me on that because I don't know for sure if they
Right.
are or not. There. Well, there's another picture of the same staging yard. This is where I'm laying out the track.
Right.
I'm trying to see how everything laid out. Now the secret to getting this to work right and not have problems with it is on each one of these curved turnouts here. I set them up so that the inside diverging track there they were lined up so that this was exactly 90 degrees. So when you connected this piece of flex track to here, there wasn't any curve you had to put in. Yes, you had to put a curve on this one, but on this one, and as you see here, they were perfectly straight coming off of that turnout. And it, again, I didn't have any problems with derailments in the staging area either.
Oh,
Why is it double-ended? Because having a double-ended staging yard greatly improves your operation. And the other thing is, I never had to touch a train that went into staging. It went into staging in one end, came out the other
the
end.
other end, right?
There. Now, here it is. Here's the finished product done. Everything's done on it. You'll see about halfway down there, I put re-railers in. Those
Right.
re-railers were there just as a safety so that when the trains ran through, that they would re-rail themselves regardless of which direction they were going. If I wanted to do it for oval for kill, I could have put a re-railer here and at the other end. There's put two of them in, but the problem would have been on this curved section right here. You would have had to go way down here
Right.
to do it. So I just went ahead and put 6 of them in right in the middle of the staging yard there. That solved any problems that I was going to have with it. Okay, the question came up is what do you do if all your staging is hidden? This is the simple answer. You put cameras in. Solves the problem. There. And I had 4 cameras on this staging yard. 2 of them pointed up along the walls towards where the trains were going to come out onto the layout. The other 2 pointed along the staging tracks there so that people could see. And I'll go to the next slide here, and you'll see what's going on here. Those are the cameras. The top 2 are the ones that were pointing up the tracks that are coming out onto the layout. The bottom 2 pictures are at each end of the staging yard. The great thing about this is if there was a train in here, I would have on the operating session which track the train was on. We would have a diagram of how the tracks were numbered. And then when a engineer would acquire his train, all he had to do is once he acquired it, turn the headlight on and he could instantly see if the train was ready to come
Right.
out.
That makes sense.
Yeah. Plus also what this worked for is when you were bringing trains into staging there, like in 1955, we had cabooses.
Right.
So as a operator was bringing a train into here, he could see the caboose. And I used to always tell him, you bring the caboose in about a car length and a half past the end of that turnout and you'll be fine.
Okay.
Be safe and that. So that's what we did there. Also, to make things less complicated, this probably doesn't look less complicated, but it really is when it's done.
M&M
These are,
Rails. Bill, I'm sorry to interrupt you. M&M
that's
Rails says I have a camera pointed on my fridge. I don't trust my guest.
okay. I use NCE. This is the system on the layout. So these are NCA switch 8s. And for those of you that don't understand what those do, for a hidden staging area or hard to reach staging area, this is a lifesaver. And what
Right.
you do with this is using a handheld NCE throttle there, you can program into the hammerhead a macro that is a number, and you simply push a button and you put this number in, and this switch 8 automatically aligns every turnout to come out of staging and get on and come onto the layout. You don't have to go look at them. You
Right.
don't have to check them. Just make sure you put the right number in. I have two of these. One is on the one end of the staging, which in this case it says Spokane staging. The other one is on the other end, which would have been the Vancouver staging there. And so you didn't have to look, you didn't have to see if they turn out. So all you had to do was make sure you punched in this right macro, and all of the switches at once aligned, and your train was ready to come out. Yep. This is my super simple command station. It's simply a Power Pro with a couple wires coming off of it, the power pack sitting on a shelf that sits underneath the benchwork. I mean, that's how mine was radio controlled. So there was no reason for me to have to. And I had this on a power switch that was on the front of the layout. I could just flip a switch and it would power it on. So there was really no reason to get into this command station if everything was working correctly.
Right.
So this literally sat under the layout for me there. And that's the end, folks, except I would like you to pay attention to that box car that's sitting there. Bill might know what that is.
Oh, that's the Canavelli pasta products.
Yes, it is, Billy.
That's it, from the South Brooklyn Railroad.
Yeah. Yeah. This car got all the way from Brooklyn to Fort Collins, Colorado. It made a long trip. And where is it at? It's at a distributor, a food distributor that I have there.
There you go. Best pasta in the world, the Canavelli Pasta Factory.
I thought you would enjoy that, Bill.
Well, there's nothing like having good pasta out in Colorado.
That's right. That's exactly right.
You know?
That is true. Now, I'll be happy to answer questions. I'll be happy to go back to any pictures that we had there if somebody has something else they want to ask.
Sure. Hot Rod Rodney 25 says that his controls were behind the wall at their old house.
Yeah, that made it a little more difficult.
M&M Rails is clapping. Nice presentation. A lot of food for thought, says Dave at BNSF N Scale.
Yeah. Well, again, please don't think this is the only way to do it. This is simply my way of doing it. And I'm always open to other ways to do it.
Sure.
I've got a funny little story I'll tell you about ways to do it. Those of you who have heard me before talk about it, and I showed you a lot of pictures of his layout, John Parker's layout, the Burlington Northern Santa Fe Fall River Division. I do operate on that layout, and John, that's a mushroom style benchwork. It's probably one of the top. I think it's one of the top 10 layouts, home layouts in the country. When John was building it, they were doing the framework, and John was using 3/4 inch plywood and doing some L-girder type work. You don't quite do L-girder with a mushroom design, but it was a similar thing. So somebody was over there looking at the layout and says to John, "Why did you use 3/4 inch plywood to build this thing?" And John's answer to the gentleman was, "Because they don't make 1 inch." And what I think John also did, he can correct me on this at some point. Once all the benchwork was built, John came back and painted it with a product like Kills, so that it totally protected the wood, and the wood couldn't expand and contract.
Everyone is saying Container Man 68, very good presentation. Grandpa Rails, I've learned a lot tonight, Bill.
Thank you.
And Eminem Rails wants to know, can you go back to the track plan of the first level? I want to see the track that goes around the Helix.
Sure.
Is that what you're talking about, Mark?
Now, when you talked to Chuck Bay a few months ago, Bill, uh, he did exactly the same thing here. He's got his is a branch line, not a main line, but it goes around the outside of a helix too. Was there a reason he wanted to know about this, and maybe I can answer something for him?
He says thanks, but he hasn't given one yet. Give him a minute or so.
You see the transformation.
Okay. And again, what you see is on either side of that path, when we get between the staging and the helix, I've got two towns there, two small towns.
Yeah, Container Man 68 says, I've done L-girder, flat top cookie cutter, works good with risers. Last layout will be a modular and mobile lightweight aluminum and foam.
Yeah.
Paul Muscat asks, should benchwork in multi-level layouts be built for each level in sections or the whole level at once each time?
No, well, what I did with this layout here, Paul, is I built the staging level first because it was the lowest level. It was only 4 inches lower or 3 inches lower than some of the other parts of the layout, but it was the lowest part. So I did the staging first. And again, as I said earlier in the program, I wanted to make sure that staging was bulletproof. So I did the staging first, then I did the main level, which you're looking at here. I did the upper level last there. And again, somebody in the program tonight talked earlier about they have to stand on their main level to work on their upper level layout. Well, as you can see with this design, we didn't have to worry about that because again, I only got 13 foot wide here.
Right.
So I had to be, I had to, and by having those staging tracks coming along the walls, coming onto the visible portion, I didn't even have 13 feet. I probably had a grand total of 12 foot, maybe at the most, to deal with here.
Eminem Rail says, I'm guessing the main line goes over the staging.
Yes, exactly right.
Yep.
There. The staging, where you see those two turnbacks that are going over the top of the staging, those are probably 4 inches above staging, maybe 5 inches above staging. There,
And
not a lot, just enough so that be like same thing as doing a helix, almost
right.
same type of thing.
And Paul Muscat again says, and finally, is there a recommended rule for setting your minimum and maximum level heights for multi-level layouts for N scale?
No. What I recommend there on N scale layouts,
He says he's
especially
asking,
on.
he says he's asking. Well, the reason why he's asking, he says, because he's 5'7".
Yes, I kind of thought that's where we were going with this.
Okay.
The situation is real simple with N scale in my mind. There, I don't like N scale layouts where when you look at it, you're kind of like you're on the main level, you're in a helicopter.
Right.
Because it's too low.
Right.
But again, like Paul says there, he's 5'7". I'm 5'11". That's only 4 inches, but that's a big difference. That is a big difference. I would suggest to Paul to make the height that he's comfortable with and try to get it up high enough so that you're not looking like you're in a helicopter flying over the top of it, because then it looks like a toy train layout. The more you can get it up,
right,
better look.
And Eminem Rail says the reason why I wanted to look at that photo was to see if you could run a train around without entering the helix.
Yes.
Best Buddy's layout has a helix, and you have to enter the helix for continuous running.
Yes, I avoided that on this one here. And again, understand that what this helix is on this particular design. The helix is simply an extension of the upper level, which on this layout is the Oregon trunk line, which is basically, for a better term, the branch line. It's just a branch line there. And again, this branch line literally starts when it leaves, when it goes through here, it comes onto the track right here. It makes this curve and goes across the bridge. That's where it starts, is right there. And where it ends up is up on the second level above the helix, where I've got the staging for a bend up there. So
yeah, and Container Man 68 says, if I were to do multi-level end scale layout, I would do a lower level while sitting on a chair and an upper level while standing.
yeah, that's fine. Again, if you're sitting in the chair on that main level, if you're standing running trains, that's way too low. In my, at least now, also, so everybody understands, when I don't tell people how tall to make their bench work. When I design a track plan, the main level, if I'm designing a multi-level track plan, when I design the track plan, the main level is always 0 elevation.
Right.
That's its 0. And then everything from there is either a plus or a minus. So if we had staging that was on a lower level, usually the staging would be a minus 18 inches below 0 elevation. And then if there's an upper level, it's a plus 18 inches. Why do I do that? Because everybody's different. Example of Paul, 5'7". He's not going to have the main level the same height as I would, but the numbers are going to stay the same as far as the separation between the levels. That stays the same.
Mm.
I have some people that have me design end scale layouts, multi-deck end scale layouts with a 12-inch separation, and they think it's fine. My own personal opinion, it's a little too low. But again, it's not my layout. They just pay me to design it.
Well, M&M Rails says a chair with wheels, and Container Man 68 goes, yes, Mark, and a beer cup holder.
That's true.
Let's not forget the mini fridge.
Yeah, there's been a lot of layouts where people sit down on the lower levels and operate, and that's not a new concept by any stretch. The problem can come in on a multi-level layout with having a chair like that. Is anybody that's running trains on the upper level has to be really careful as they work around the person sitting in the chair, rolling back and forth.
This hobby has created many people with some really, really great ideas and have gone out and manufactured those ideas, i.e. such as mini prints,
Sure.
Iowa Electronics with the handheld controller that looks like part of the diesel engine. I am surprised that nobody has come up with and either prefab or came up with an idea of a chair that could accommodate everybody's needs, such as a cup holder, a fold down table that you can write on and draw and work on your projects, and with the seating that gives you heat and you don't get back fatigue. I'm just surprised that no one has come up with that kind of.
And something that maybe people aren't thinking about here too, Bill, which is always a big part of my design philosophy. If you're sitting in a chair, then you're really not operating a walk along railroad. You're simply, for an off session, staying in one location, and that happens a lot on John Parker's layout. There's 18 of us that are operating that layout because it's 2,700 square foot. And there are guys that stay for 3 hours or 4 hours in one location and don't move because that's what they like to do. They like to work there. But the fun part for me when I'm operating is I want to follow that train around the room. Feels like I'm going somewhere.
Yeah, I'm a fat bastard, so I don't want to. My thing is no pain, no pain. I'm not about
Right. Right. Well, and you do have people that have leg problems who can't follow a train.
No, you're
So,
absolutely correct.
so them staying in one location during an op session is perfect for them.
Well, that was one of the reasons why getting my knee replaced was paramount. So that I could do that. Wait,
you don't want it to hurt anymore.
Container Man 68 says, wait, train locomotive engineers are sitting all the time. Yes, they are.
That's
and
right.
it can play havoc on your back. I will tell you that.
Well, also what you'll also notice in my profession, the designing profession, how many John Armstrong layouts do we see designed today? Not very many.
True.
Because the philosophy of model railroads from John Armstrong's era to today has changed. And it's changed, and I say it every show practically, it's changed because of DCC.
Yes.
DCC completely changed this hobby.
It revolutionized it.
It absolutely did not. When you can now run a train without worrying about flipping a switch, and you can run a train like a real railroad runs a train, that's pretty cool.
The fact of the matter that you can run a train in Australia in Minnesota at another man's layout or another woman's layout or whatever.
Yeah, that's right.
Is amazing. Eminem Rail says, great show, Bills. Very informative. He has to run. Well, Eminem, you be well. Mark, be great, be well, be safe, and be blessed this week.
Yep. And I think I'm going to go get something to eat too. I'm going to shut this down here, Bill, if that's okay with you.
With you on it? Are you leaving? You're not leaving. You're going to stay in the green room, right?
Stay in the green room.
Just for a minute.
Just for a minute.
Yeah.
I will do that.
Container Man 68 says, old age, bad knees, bad ankles, bad feet hurt while standing on hard surfaces. Bill, I'm a truck driver. I know bad backs. I believe you, brother. I believe you. Well, we want to thank you.
I want to say something, Bill. I want to thank everybody because we had a lot of questions tonight, didn't we?
Yeah, we did.
That's great. That's perfect. That's what I want.
Yeah. Well, we thank you, Bill, for being on the show and taking time out of your busy schedule to do this. We're going to have one more to complete the fourth session, part 4 on. It's going to be operations. Is that correct?
What it's going to be, I pretty much got it in the can. I'm going to do some changes to it. It's going to be how, again, I suggest people set up their layouts for operating sessions.
Right.
And this doesn't mean that it has to be a layout that I design. This can be a 4x8 layout can have an operating session put together on it. This is simply going to go through the steps that I suggest people go through in determining traffic flows, how trains are going to run, what kind of trains are going to run, all the things that are involved in getting an op session ready to go.
Okay, great. So that we're going to have in April, and that will be the last show. And Bill, I just
then in Colorado, it's golf time.
There you go, brother. There you go.
Right.
Well, we want to thank you, Bill, for coming in and joining us and sharing your knowledge and just having a good time with us. And we thank you for doing that. And we're looking forward to the next installment of this plan. But before you guys move on and click off, I want you to listen to me. March 29th, next Wednesday, we're going to have our first remote live show from the Thomas Van Dyke Art Gallery in Brooklyn, New York. That's where I'm going to interview Luis Ramos. He's an artist in Brooklyn, New York, in the Sunset Park area. And at first, I thought he was a model railroader, and it turns out that he's not, but he does have a fascination for New York City and the New York City Transit Authority, where many of his paintings depict the subway and dioramas that he has scratch built himself. And check this out, guys. When you see this guy's work, you're going to say, this guy didn't scratch built this. But he did. He did. And it's in 1/64th scale. And the places that he's depicted on his dioramas and his paintings, I know these locations. I grew up around those locations. So, like he has a scene of an elk crossing down in the neighborhood is the local bodegas, the bakeries, the Chinese stores. You can smell them cooking. That's how realistic these things are. And it's all scratch built. So that's next Wednesday, 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We will be remote live at this gallery, Thomas Van Dyke Gallery of Brooklyn. We're going to do a short interview with the gallery owner, and then we're going to launch right into Luis. So definitely, please tune in and let other people know. I think you're going to be extremely surprised, and it's going to be worthwhile. Also, I just want to give out a kind of a warning, since this is our first remote live show from outside of my lovely house, and I'm going to be in the field mostly. Please, we're going to work on it day before the technical issues, but hope to iron all those out. We should be able to do the live stream. We should be, but if there's a little glitch in it, please bear with us. But it's going to be a great show. I promise you. It will be a definitely great show. Okay, and it's going to be live, and I'm going to be there in person. So I'm going to be sitting next to Luis, which is I'm looking forward to. And so that's it basically. And this is Model Railroading Live, the greatest model railroading show on the earth. Why? Because I said so. That's why. So in the meantime, you guys take care, be well, be safe, and most often be blessed. And we'll see you guys on the radio.